Now we are.
There we are. Okay.
Hey, everybody. We are live today with Paul and Cheryl Steens from Steens Manuka Honey. And today we're going in for a deep dive.
G'day, everyone.
Now you can say good day.
Yeah.
Hi, everyone. How are you? What's the weather like over there?
Say that again.
What's your weather like? You getting lots of snow?
We're getting the most snow we've ever gotten in a long time. Portland, Seattle, we're getting 2 feet. And so that's really unusual. We have the worst power outages in Portland, Oregon area. So I think 71% of the United States currently is under some sort of snow or storm warning. So this is a perfect time to talk about honey, Manuka honey.
Yeah.
Because everyone's at home. All the eyeballs are at home. Hi, everybody. Hey, everyone. I'm Maggie UMD. I'm a functional and holistic medicine physician and owner of Transform. And if you haven't joined our Facebook group already, make sure you join our Facebook group, Transform Autoimmune Disease Naturally. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure you like and subscribe to our channel. And if you're watching on IG, make sure you give us a follow. Today, we actually have Cheryl and Paul Steens from Steens Manuka Honey, my favorite Manuka honey from New Zealand. And last time, this is part 2. Last time we went into what is Manuka honey and what's the difference between some of the rating systems in it. And there was such a huge response from it. I asked Cheryl and Paul to come back. And we're going to go into a deep dive in what is some of the manufacturing processing of Manuka. We're going to go deep today with all the questions that people had from our Facebook group and on our pages. So right now, for all of you guys that are watching, can you guys give us a thumbs up and a heart? If there's someone that you know that would benefit from learning about the health benefits of Manuka honey, put their name in the comment section right now. That would be awesome. If you have a question for Paul, Cheryl, or myself about the role of the use of Manuka honey or medicinal uses of it, put in the comments. I'm happy to answer those later. And so, all right, we're going to get started. All right. Okay. So, Paul, Cheryl, I'd love for you guys to do a quick introduction of yourself and your company.
Oh, yeah. Well, I'm Paul, and I've been beekeeping for the last 40 years. So we're still learning a lot. There's a never-ending thing with bees. You're always learning something. There's so many interactions between the bees and the weather and the seasons. And, of course, they're constantly changing. So everything changes with that because, of course, the bees react to the weather conditions. So, yeah, it's been a really good journey.
And Cheryl?
I think, we like I said last time when we started, it was just so we kind of fell into bees because of the lifestyle that we were striving for. We wanted to be, I was teaching and Paul was a butcher and we ended up managing a butcher shop and sounds terrible, he was a butcher.
How did that happen?
And we were just wanting a really sustainable lifestyle, and we had an orchard, we had our own vegetable garden, we had a milking goat and all sorts of stuff, and bees were missing really. So Paul fell in love with bees and I fell in love with Paul before that, and we both fell in love with bees. And and we bought 3 beehives one Saturday morning, and that was the rest of our life really. Yeah, we've been bees ever since.
And last time we did what is Manuka honey. So I don't want to go into that, but I do want to tell everybody who's watching right now, on the top of this video or in the copy there or in the comment section right now, our team is actually putting a link for you to download a beautiful guide that we created on, and I'm just going to share the screen right there, on how to use these are just so you guys know, these are Cheryl's personal recipes that I have modified to add the medical biohack zhuzh to it. And just so you guys can look, go ahead and click download to check your comment section in the copy above and download this guide. It's really got a ton full of information and some of my notes in there and Cheryl's notes in there as well. And just so you guys know, some of the pictures were taken by Cheryl as well. All right, before we dive right back in, all right, you just talked a little bit about why you fell in love with Paul and then Manuka. I think before we even start this, I think a really great question is, how does beekeeping And how does beekeeping and owning a company with raw Manuka honey, how does it reflect on what is your own personal mission and drive?
I guess if we go back to our production and how we produce honey, and there's lots of ways, lots of traditional ways of ending up with beautiful honey out of a beehive into a pot that sits on a shelf for people to buy. And traditionally, we always sold our honey in bulk, and it went on shelf in supermarkets in the UK. And when we went on a trip over there, as I alluded to last time, we were shocked at what had happened to the honey that we had sold. So it didn't sit with our values. It didn't sit with the, it didn't seem right that we produced this honey and we fed our family it and it was beautiful and raw and everything. All the goodness was there, and yet our consumers that we were selling it to weren't getting those benefits. So there was a massive link that was missing, a massive step in the chain that was missing for us. So it was really important then when Paul and I came back to New Zealand to look at how we could process that honey and keep it as raw and as natural and put it in a pot for our consumers. So that was, we had to do that ourselves.
Well,
so,
I think right off the bat, I can tell people that how Steens Manuka honey comes straight out of the bottle is very different than other brands of Manuka and regular honey. What makes Steens Manuka so different in the texture, the great, the nuttiness of it? Why is it so different?
Okay, so that comes back to how we handle the product from when it first comes off the beehive. And there's two sort of key areas there. One area is getting the honey out of the comb, or removing the wax from the honey, if you want to look at this is the way we look at it. So we get the honey and it's crushed, the wax and the bee bread, which we can talk more about later. The bee bread, there's a critical nutrient in there that gets skipped in most honey processes because the honey is spun out of the comb and the bee bread is left behind as a pollen. So what we worked out a way of crushing the whole thing and just leaving taking the wax out of it for a proprietary process, and just ended up with a really nice honey with all the nutrients and goodness in it. And this goes into a container. So that's the first step. The second step of this process is when we come to put it into a pot. And this is a step in the process where 99% of people get the product, heat it up into a liquid form, and then once it's in a liquid form, it's standardized for them, it's easy to handle, it's all the same. And then they add a crystal into it, which then they blend and mix, and they end up with a very smooth type honey. Now, it's consistent, it's always smooth, it's always the same, so it sort of works with the manufacturing process, whereas we've opted to not go down that process because the heating involved is taking this honey way beyond where it ever should be. So what we do is we have a process that we don't take this honey, it doesn't even get to body temperature. I mean, it's significantly lower than body temperature, and if your body got down to that temperature, you wouldn't probably be alive. So it's very, very a very cool temperature. And then we've found a process that we can use to get it from there into the pot. It's just a change of containers with doing nothing else.
And I guess,
and so what you end up with is this honey just that's formed its natural crystal, just like it does in nature. It just, we haven't changed it. It's got all the bee bread in it. And that's why you get this taste and flavor, because when you heat the honey, like they do, the flavors come out. That's all the phenolics and the taste is all, comes out with the temperature and the constant mixing and stirring and mixing and stirring that's done. So you end up just denaturing a very good product, because it's a very sensitive product to heat and all these other components. So
I'm just going to show everybody what Steens honey looks like, because I could show my empty bottle, but I'm going to show the full bottle here, and look at how different that looks. It is, and the flavor is definitely, there's a nuttiness to it. There's a depth to the flavor that almost, there's a little slight ferment, a little bit. I wanted to ask about the pollen. Like that, people ask about pollen and honey all the time, and you guys are the experts on it. What's bioavailable pollen? How is it different? What's going on with that?
Well, I guess that's one of the unique things about how we process our honey through that crushing and that scraping, is that all the pollen that has been taken inside the hive and processed by the bees is retained in the honey. And it's absolutely, in fact, I was just reading, and I can't regurgitate the reading because there's so many words I didn't understand from some, but they're published papers, but there's a whole lot of research going on in the background at the moment on bee bread and looking at how using it as a functional food. And they're seeing so much, they're saying there's massive potential out there.
The bee bread, so everybody watching understands. So the bees bring the pollen in from the flower, and it's on their legs, and then they remove that, and then they put enzymes in there with it, and then that's packed into the cells along with the honey. Okay, but it's packed into the base of the cell, and they often put honey on top of it. And so what generally happens is that it's pollen, and then once the bees treat it and do what they do with it, we then call it bee bread.
It goes through a solid fermentation
and it's called
process.
Bee bread because back in the day people realized they didn't understand all of it, but they realized that this is the food for the bees. This is what keeps them alive. This is the actual, the honey is the carbohydrate, it's the energy, but the pollen is the food. It's got all the minerals, amino acids, proteins. It's the complete food to give the bees all that power they need to do their job.
Yeah.
So I want to actually talk to in our audience for a second. I want people who've already been familiar and using real Manuka honey in their health. I'd love for you to comment in the comment section how you use Manuka honey and how has it helped you. I just want to summarize what we talked about in the last podcast, which is that, specifically Manuka honey is from specific plant. And specifically, there are standards in certain countries where, specifically New Zealand, where there is really high standards of what is real, actually labeled Manuka honey. Whereas if you get Manuka honey from other places in the world, there are just no standards to a lot of that labeling. And also even the word raw that we talked about, that a lot of Manuka honey carry, a lot of them are not raw. They're heat treated and they're not raw. Whereas what I really love about Steens honey is that it truly is raw, which is the process they just described. Now that rawness what happens is when you have that rawness, it preserves the antimicrobial properties at a much higher level. And the other part of this is you guys retain the pollen and allow the pollen to be the natural fermentation process in the creation of this honey naturally. And to me, that's where the people come in and say, can it help with allergies? And the answer is, yes, it can help with allergies when you actually consume small amounts of pollen. But I also love the fact that there's a fermentation process. And we talk about the medical benefits of fermented foods. And that fermentation process really facilitates the ability of the gut bacteria to actually utilize the honey. And that fermentation is what a lot of this bacteria in your gut is trying to do to actually help detoxify your body and help your body naturally decrease inflammation and heal. So these words that we're just talking about, they fit into the whole landscape of functional medicine and natural healing. And so I want to make that really clear. Sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, I think, and it's the assimilation of it too, how our bodies can do it. And for the bees, if the bees were just to the bees can't take that pollen in off the flower just as it is. It's got to go through that solid fermentation state. And then it's bioavailable to them. And it's the same for us. It's so much more readily for our bodies to be able to
digest and utilize.
Because it's already gone through all that process.
It's a bit like trying to eat a potato. When it's not cooked, if you eat cooked potato, it's going to do you a lot more than eating it raw.
Correct.
Lot more you can absorb it, and it's the same thing.
I tell you, it's been about a month since our last podcast and interview, and I've had so much of our alumni use it just as much as I have. And we talked about different ways to use it. We talked about using teaspoons of it, just chewing and swallowing it to help with gut infection. I personally, in between last month and now, had a severe dental infection and I had to extract the tooth. And I took like a half a teaspoon of Manuka honey and just chewed it about 3-4 times a day. I was supposed to get my stitches out 3 weeks after the procedure. I was back for a check about 10 days after the procedure. My dentist's jaw was like on the floor. He's like, I've never seen healing like this. I'm just going to take your stitches out now. And I'm like, thanks, Manuka Honey. But I think there's a lot that's going on right now, not just about your gut microbiome, but there's a dental biome. And that absolutely being able to choose some of that Manuka honey. And I used a UMF 24 was so powerful anti-infection wise. I only took the antibiotics for a very short. He wanted me for 10 days. 3 days later, the wound was already healing and closing. No sign of infection. I called him. I said, okay, I don't take the rest of those antibiotics. I did not have to. And he even removed the stitches early. So clearly there's gut infection, gut soothing, dental infection, wound healing right on skin, wound healing, well documented. And I talked last time about the face mask, and the face mask is in the recipe guide. So make sure you download it. And Monica, one of our alumni, just said she's loving using it as a face mask, and her hubby is using it for his H. pylori, gut infection. Love it.
Yeah.
I mean, and so many people. Margaret is watching and joining us, and Christina, one of another person in our Facebook group, an alumni, just says she got her first order. Super excited to get started. So
sorry, Maggie, I gave Paul a face mask once. I said to him, I need to put the Manuka honey on your face and see what it does. Honestly, he said, get it off. So if you want to talk about face masks,
Yeah, I like to use it for my H. pylori. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So one of the things that you say is, what should you never do with your Manuka honey? We already alluded to it, but I want to make it pretty clear to people why.
Put it on your face.
We're never put on it.
Not even put it on my face.
I love using it on my face. It's great.
It's fantastic on your face. And Maggie, just coming back to putting it on your face, tell me, after you've done that, how did your face feel?
Super smooth. So what happens is I actually like the graininess in Steens, because I put it on, I just wait about 10 minutes, I go in the shower, I don't use soap, I just naturally use the water, and it naturally, the graininess exfoliates. So it's like little baby smooth skin when I'm done with this and out of the shower, and I don't use any soap. I don't recommend people use soap because you don't want to wash that Manuka off. You actually want to use it for like a little microdermabrasion, but you also want the antibacterial wound healing properties to actually stay on your skin. So it feels wonderful.
Yeah. Well, I had a girlfriend who used to use it frequently, and she was running, and she came back from a run one day and she said, my run was amazing. She said, as I was running and I was kind of sweating, she said, I kept licking my lips and all I could taste was honey. But that's great. Yeah.
No one's complaining on this side.
What you should never do with honey, well, one of the major things that I say if you want it for, okay, so I'm going to contradict myself here really, because I'm going to say, you should never heat it, but I bake with it and I cook with it and I put it because I don't use sugar. I don't use dead white sugar crystals. I always use honey. So I cook with honey. So I do heat it. But if you can have it raw, then that's the very best way to have it. So if you're using it because you want to, through some gut ailment or skin thing or throat or anything like that, then you don't heat it. And if you want to have it every day as a tonic, like in the recipes with the tea, then just you don't pour boiling water over. We know that the antibacterial activity in Manuka honey is heat stable, but we still wouldn't have the jug boiling and pour it over because we're losing enzymes and we're losing other things.
You're losing the peroxide activity. That's very heat sensitive. So, you think about, if you just have it as a sweetener because you just don't like using sugar, like we don't use sugar, then of course you're going to have there's a compromise between getting the sweetness and losing some of the enzyme. But because we eat so much of it raw anyway, it becomes a bit of a
I think my biggest biohack with Manuka honey is I love actually starting my morning with it, and I use warm water, so not boiling water. So what I do is just have warm. I have a hot water dispense, but I just use warm water. I put in a teaspoon of Steens Manuka honey. I put in a scoop of our collagen to also heal the gut, I squeeze in some organic lemon juice and a couple slices of ginger because I love ginger, and it really helps rev your liver to detox first thing in the morning. I drink 20 ounces of that water every morning, and it's been the biggest game changer in my health. And I think and just switching out my honey to be Steens, I think that made a big difference. But I want to point out something, which is like, I like the fact that you have all these different UMF grades available, and UMF is units of microbial factor, which means the ability to actually kill bacteria or the germs. Now, I know that there's 5, which I would say it's more of a everyday Manuka for me. Like if you're going to actually bake with it, if you're going to actually cook with it, I would say the 5 one is pitch perfect for that.
Perfect.
But if you're going to be using it, I think if you're going to be using it on your skin and on your face, we really want all those preserved, all the peroxidase activities, all the antimicrobial activity. You're looking at very high UMF ones like 24, 27 to actually have that antimicrobial activity. If I'm using it for H. pylori, I'm using it for dental gum infection type stuff, definitely 24 or 27 UMF in that realm. I just want to give people, is that the right way of thinking about this?
Yeah, and you could, 15 might work too, but it just means you're eating more of it. Obviously you can only eat so much honey. So if you're eating it and you're putting it into your stomach or into your mouth, it's good to have the high activity because it's more potent. You don't need as much of it. So, for H. pylori, just a quarter of a teaspoon of a 24 plus on a regular basis. I'm talking throughout the day, throughout the night when you wake up, every few hours. So it's always in contact is the key, keeping it in contact with the stomach, and it's just constantly knocking that.
Little and often,
and it just knocks that bacteria. It seriously knocks that bacteria back in a hurry.
So another question I have is people talk about why not just buy regular honey? Why not buy just Manuka anywhere as long as it's labeled Manuka? Why is it that, like, when you're talking about real quality Manuka, why is it such highly valued?
Sorry, what was that? As in,
why is New Zealand Manuka, and specifically even Steens, why is it also the higher UMF you go? Why is the price higher? Why is it so highly valued?
It's purely it's purely based on availability. Okay, so it's a lot harder to get pure stands of Manuka with no influence from any other honeys around it. So it's hard to get. They're very you pay a lot to get onto these blocks. They're very limited. There's only certain areas. Some of them are quite excluded. Some of them you can only get to by ferrying in hives with helicopters. So it's a lot harder to get. It's if you think of a 5+ Manuka, it has other honeys in it as well, and that's diluted the UMF factor. Yeah. So it's the more, I suppose you could say that the higher the activity, the more pure the Manuka.
And it's a very limited resource. It's not like it's
very limited.
Yeah.
Someone just asked a question, Muka from our Facebook group just says, I bought 20 plus for the face. Should I buy 24 plus instead for face use, like face mask or open wound healing?
20 plus is fine for the face as a thing. But if I was doing wound healing, if you've got a thing, I'd definitely start higher and then you can reduce.
And if it was for, say, if you had particular issue with your skin, acne or eczema or whatever, you would go with a higher one for sure.
Yeah. And you might, like, if you have got skin things going on and you put a high one on, you might get some slight stinging, but it'll subside.
What is SIBO?
So someone just asked, Christina just asked, is it safe for individuals prone to SIBO, which is small intestinal bowel overgrowth? So is it safe for people dealing with gut infection is the question. And then Christina, I would love to answer that question, which is that it's the amount and quantity. Anytime where you're dealing with a gut infection, whether it's SIBO, Candida, or any sort of other gut infection, we don't want a high carbohydrate load to actually feed the infection. That being said, we're talking about using Manuka honey, whereas in the quantity is not huge. We're talking a quarter teaspoon, half a teaspoon. And the other thing too is it's also been fermented by some of the bee's natural activity. The other thing is it's highly antimicrobial. So you can't just look at it as, oh, this is just a teaspoon of sugar and that's an equivalent. It's actually, think of it almost medicinally, because there's a lot of medicinal qualities that come with that small amount that you're using several times throughout the day. So absolutely, I feel it's absolutely safe to use while we're trying to deal with gut infection. And in fact, I do recommend it, because the other thing is it actually can help clear those infections by the gut soothing properties of it and also the antimicrobial properties of it, making all the other ways you kill gut infection even more effective. I hope that answers the question. We have another question. Is there any benefit to lung problems, interstitial lung disease? So this question for me just comes with, can it be helpful in any sort of autoimmune or inflammatory condition? And the answer is, it depends. I look at as, does your tummy and gut need soothing? Does it need help with a little bit of digestive support? You know, and if it does, I would think, yeah, I would, if you're going to sweeten, use Manuka honey. The other thing is digestive enzymes. So in our store, I have Digest It, which is a really great multiphasic digestive enzyme if you're dealing with digestive problems anyway. But Manuka is really easily digested and processed in the gut. So it's really helpful for a lot of people with autoimmunity or irritable bowel type stuff to actually have something that soothes their gut and helps fight infection. So overall, the other group is that if you're dealing with active infection, of course, it's going to be helpful. So it really depends. You know, do you want some sort of gut soothing, or do you want any sort of antimicrobial action, or do you have an open wound that needs to be healed, or do you have face and skin problems? Those, I would say, in all those conditions would be incredibly helpful.
And I think also if you've got throat or, throat going down a bit further, infections, you want to prevent those from going into your lung. You take the Manuka honey, and while it's still in that stage, if you like, that's the point to get it before it turns into a lung infection.
Well, I think that's great, because right now we're dealing with COVID, the pandemic, and we're dealing with a lot of people with upper respiratory infection. And then for people that have autoimmune disease or lung disease, they're at much higher risk. So one of the things that we talk about for people with cough or cold and flu is lemon and honey and ginger, making a tea out of that. And to me, that's ideal to put your Steens Manuka in for that reason. And I would use a high UMF, especially if you're battling symptoms of any sort of viral infection. I think that'd be a really great idea.
Yeah, and definitely not pour your boiling water over it. You know, when my mum used to make me a lemon and honey drink, and she'd pour the boiling water, and everything would be hot and steaming. So you let that water cool before you put the honey in.
I love that. Holly is asking, is it sold in stores like Whole Foods? Before you answer that, I want to actually point everybody out to, I'll have people, our team put the Steens Manuka Honey website in the comment section, but it's also on the top of this video as well, on Facebook, on the bottom of this video, on YouTube. Just click the link to their website. There's also currently at this time, there's actually a surprise flash sale going on. But there is a code as well from us that you can use in there that will give you a discount for the next 30 days, just so you guys know. So definitely go to the website to order. But Holly's question, is it sold in stores like Whole Foods or any natural food outlets?
So we're just in the stage now of starting to go into bricks and mortar in America, and we're starting to work towards that point. But I think, to help us on that journey, if you like, if people, when they're in the store, say, do you stock Steens Manuka Honey, and we'd like to be able to buy it through your store, that would definitely help us get into these types of stores. But that is our process at the moment, and we're online, of course, but we're working hard with brokers in America to get it into the bricks and mortar stores.
And it's been a little hard because of COVID and trying to have face-to-face meetings. We our guys aren't able to have sort of face-to-face meetings because of COVID, and so but we hope
for you. So do you guys sell it through Amazon?
Yes.
And do you prefer people get it through Amazon? Do you prefer people get it through your website? Is there any sort of difference?
It doesn't matter. Whatever's easiest for the consumer to be able to purchase it and get it. Yeah.
I do want to point out something though, which is that I have seen, like, just searching on Amazon, if you just search Manuka Honey or even raw Manuka Honey, many brands will come up, but like, go ahead.
What? I know.
But the thing is, a lot of them aren't even really true quality Manuka, and a lot of them aren't even raw.
Well, it's like a mind fizz, really, when you go on, what do you choose? Who would you choose?
Right.
And I guess it's always about finding that, there's a beautiful point in time as a consumer, I find personally, where you don't have to do any of that thinking anymore. You've just found a brand that you trust. And you can walk into the supermarket, whether it be an online supermarket like Amazon, and you just know that that's the honey, or that's the whatever, the juice, whatever you buy, because you trust that brand. And I guess it's for consumers to make that choice and that part of their journey. Who do they choose and who do they trust? And that's something they have to work out.
Paul, Cheryl, I think that I feel like, I don't know about the world, but at least in America, I don't think the general public really even understands the medicinal use of Manuka, and then to tell the difference between the real stuff and not so good stuff. So, I mean, my feeling is I love doing an interview or video like this. And man, even on Amazon, if you're able to do clips of this video to actually help educate people on like, what is UMF, what is really raw, why out of New Zealand, or what are some medicinal uses, or share the guide, the recipe guide and the use guide. I think it will help go a long way, even for the Amazon audience, for them to understand, like, just the ins and outs, the deep dive into Manuka.
Yeah, and it is like we've talked about. Everybody just has picked up on the word raw, and they're using it as just because it's natural and it's from nature. And yet, we know the processing techniques, and we know that it isn't truly raw, but that's consumers have. And I guess too, it's probably not very, from a business point of view, but I've always said, I would just love people to eat honey, raw honey, rather than eat sugar. And just, if you could have the paradigm shift and just take the switch from eating just refined dead white sugar crystals to a beautiful raw honey, there's just going to be, it's just so much better.
It's mind-boggling how much better it is. Like, that's the serious do this, not that biohack right there. Like, just switch out your white sugar with a raw honey, and specifically even a better, go raw Manuka honey out of New Zealand. And it's like, it's a game changer.
Yeah, it is. It so is. Yeah.
Okay. Any final thoughts before I don't see any more questions from our audience. Any final thoughts for our audience, you two?
No, I think I think you touched on it. We've all touched on it. This aspect of the raw, I think, is really important. And we're very proud of having been able to develop a commercial technique to get this honey from the comb without changing it by heat and putting it into a pot. And it's been a challenge, a real challenge, and that's why most people don't do it, because it's very difficult. It's been a lot of hurdles. It's it's not cut and dry.
It's like a marriage.
Yeah, it's ups and downs.
You've been married?
Yeah. So
are you giving me the years? You're not going to age yourself? How long have you been married?
Yeah, we're celebrating this. Well, I don't know if we're celebrating. Are you celebrating?
Yeah, I think we should.
I think we should. 40 years. We've survived. I know. Yeah. 40 years. We've survived, and it's just it's not. For someone to say that it's just like this, it's.
So we're used to challenges. So the raw Manuka honey was nothing. That was an easy challenge. After the marriage, raw Manuka is easy to do.
She had to get over the butcher boy first.
Yeah, exactly.
I changed him into a beekeeper very soon.
I had a funny story. I was just telling someone the other day. When I was in high school, my parents owned a Datsun, and it was called a Datsun 210 wagon or something. And they owned a restaurant, but they would go to they owned a restaurant, and then like a couple times a week when fried chicken was huge at this restaurant. And so they would go, and whenever chickens were on sale at the supermarket, they would fill the Datsun 210 in the back with dead chickens, right? And that stuff leaked. And when I inherited this car, the back of the car was like caked with dried chicken blood. And when I would go to school, like just get out of my car, my best friends would be like, chicken car, huh?
Yeah. I can imagine.
That makes the exploded watermelon that went off in my boot once nothing compared with your story.
Yeah, it's hard to beat.
It's really hard to beat.
Oh my. Well, thank you so much. And on that note, we're going to end our podcast today. I would love for you guys, if you're watching this and you're not in our Facebook group, join our Facebook group, Transform Autoimmune Disease Naturally. If you have commented under any of our videos, can you make sure if you're on Facebook, check your messenger, because we probably have sent you an Easter egg full of resources in your message request that you don't even know about. So check your message request. That would be great. And for anyone who wants to learn more about what our online program is to transform autoimmune disease naturally, you can go out to our website, drmaggieu.com, and then make sure you also download the beautiful guide full of Cheryl's recipes, and I collaborated some additional stuff into it. Beautiful recipe guide. Go ahead and make sure you download that. Bonus resource for everybody. All right, everybody, have a great day. Thank you, you two.
Bye.
See you later.
Have a great day. Stay warm.
Yeah.